not every failure means, oh, it's just a pebble on the road to success and I'm going to kumbaya with everybody eventually and life just works out. Mostly it doesn't. And I wish people would talk real, because I think entrepreneurs get into business and they're shocked and they don't know how to recover. You don't earn loyalty. That's another delusion. You have to give it to somebody and trust them until you can't. And when you can't, then you can't. My hope is this, is that this new generation of owners of contact centers are different from my generation, and that they are willing to be more adaptable to technology than the past, because there is good stuff coming out with AI. But remember, AI isn't thinking for you. That's a misunderstanding of AI today. The best AI tools in the world, the best automation will fail you if you put all your confidence in it alone.
Hey everybody, welcome back to First Contact Stories of the Call Center. Super excited today to have our guest, Steve Bederman, the president of NobelBiz. And for those that don't know, Steve's been on the show before. So Steve, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, excited to have you here. Now look, we're excited about this version, this take that we're going to do differently than last time. Because last time we kind of focused on your story and the background. Now today, I understand that you've launched a whole nother direction around your podcast, around your show, your stories. And the latest series that you've come up with is interesting, The Delusions and Myths of Business. And I know you really talk a lot about family and business, so we're going to get to that a little bit later and how we see the differences on that topic. So let's kind of shift a little bit and let's talk about that show. What's different about that show from what you were doing in the past?
Well, thanks for asking. I'm excited about this show. It's really me establishing who I am to my audience in a way that I don't think I've done before. I started my shows by teaching lessons that I have learned in my life, because nobody really taught me anything Christian. So it was really me.
I'm offended.
Other than you. But it was really, I learned my job by just working. And it was very iterative. And so I picked up things as I picked up things. And I often became formal about learning new things when I just realized I didn't have that in me, and I had to go learn. I had to go study somehow. So it just came as it came. And I thought, I'm going to have a show that way, because people need to understand that not all of us come right out of school with a script of how to do it. And even if you do have that script, business doesn't work that way. And you're yes, there are formulas, but you're also facing a lot of moments that nobody else has ever faced either, and you don't have the time to ask them anyway, and you just have to learn as you go. And I wanted to give that to people so they understood that this is not always predictable. That being said, after I think 3 years of doing my lessons I've learned in no particular order show, I realized that I'm getting very frustrated with LinkedIn, and I'm getting frustrated with social media in general, and I'm reading a lot of happy talk, and I'm really tired of happy talk because it didn't seem like my experience at all in business. Not that I'm not happy, passionate, and love what I do, but at the same time, not every failure means, oh, it's just a pebble on the road to success and I'm going to kumbaya with everybody eventually and life just works out. Because mostly it doesn't. And I wish people would talk real, because I think entrepreneurs get into business and they're shocked and they don't know how to recover. And you gotta be trained to recover. So this show is about those myths, and it's how to talk real about it. And how to say, come on, let's be real. And so maybe I should have called it, hey, let's be real.
Well, look, it is the myths part, but you start with delusions, right? And there's these delusions that you really focus on how we have this perception. And I get it that you have this kumbaya moment, that everything's happy and everything's, positive. Yeah, sure, in retrospect, and in the moments when it's hard, sure, then you have to go like, I got to think positive. I got to get improvement or whatever it is. But when it gets hard, and you're saying you fail more often than you succeed, there are these challenges. What are those delusions? What are those things that you sit there and go like, this is delusional, even though it is the happy stuff? But what are some of the things that you said, man, this is the big stuff that people are just delusional about?
Well, how about the one I just recorded? A great business is a family. We're all family. We love being a family. And I have to tell you, I don't know what other people's definition of family is, but a family to me is a place that I go for solace. It's a place that I go for my deepest truth and comfort and relaxation and compassion and empathy and love and forgiveness. And business is not often, although it can be, about forgiveness. That's a delusion. We want it? Sure, yeah, we want that. Business is not about compassion. Do we want that? Sure, but it's not about that. And it's not about family because I never fire my family. And I have fired, unfortunately, hundreds and hundreds of people. Not one did I just want to do it. Not one did I not have sympathy for. But when empathy didn't always follow along, I knew what I had to do, and it's my profession, and it's a profession. And my father was a surgeon, and I guarantee you, when they went into surgery with that team, they didn't look at each other as a family. And you didn't want them looking at each other as a family if you were the one having surgery. What you wanted was that they were professionals and that they knew how to connect professionally and put their emotions at times aside. And that's a delusion to me. And it's come on, the audience should stop and say, let's be honest. That's true. And we need to look at other things that are wrong. That's just wrong. And if we stop looking at that, the point is we get down to real. And real is what makes business successful.
You know, it's interesting how you started with, I don't know what your definition of family is like. And what goes through my mind is all the friends and even my own family relationships of what do we define as family? Is it our brothers and sisters? Is it our mom and dad? Is it our own children? Is it our extended family? And you think back and I go, well, gosh, some people say, I had a fantastic family relationship. I would love it. They're my best friends. And you have other people who go, I don't even talk to my family. Like, I wish I could fire my family.
Right.
I have fired my family.
Right.
It's like, I don't even talk to them anymore. So I guess it all comes down to that idea of companies when they go, welcome to the family, or you're not part of the family. And what's interesting is, you know, outside of the fact that, yes, in theory, you could no longer talk to family, you didn't necessarily get to choose your family. Right. But you do choose to apply for a job. You do choose to continue to work at a company. You do choose whether you want to aspire to more or less, right? You don't come into the family and say, I'm the brother, and you say, well, now I'm something different. No, well, you're always the brother until you become a father, right? Or you become a mother or whatever it is. But in a job, right, you have a task. You're being paid to achieve a certain task or a certain set of goals, right? So when we think about that idea of culture in a business, I know there's always this idea of the culture being like a family. It's like, oh, we love each other. We're here to support. We're empathetic. We're compassionate for one another. So I know there is still this overlay in businesses where sometimes businesses are very transactional. It's at the end of the day, it's numbers. I got to let go of people. I got to hire people. So where do you find in your journey of seeing that delusion still have to have practical application to say, but there are things that you can take from maybe positive parts of the family or positive parts of culture where it is important to do things like compassion or empathy, or is it not? Is it just, at the end of the day, it's numbers. It's getting the business done, and you just got to fire people when you fire people.
I think, it reminds me of a discussion I had yesterday. So I'm looking at a business to acquire, and I'm speaking to the CEO, and he's built a very nice $24 million business. And he did it on his own, and he has a small group of people. This is an amazing thing. He has 14 people running a $24 million business, highly profitable.
That's efficient.
Amazing. That's my goal in life. But I don't think that's built for me. But he said to me that it's really important to him that when he hires somebody, that he says to them, I know that you do certain things and I've hired you for certain skills, but there's one thing where all bets are off, and it's if you don't connect with my team. And if you can't connect, then you just can't be here, and you can be a superstar. You just can't be here. And that resonated for me. And in fact, I can think of times where I've let go. I think of 2 times in my career where it was critical to have my top salesperson performing. And I let 2 different people go at different times that were my top salesperson. And I did it not because we didn't need their sales, we desperately did. But the idea of how they connected internally with the team, if they could chemically connect, if they did exhibit compassion and trust amongst each other, was important and apparent. And I get that sounds like something like family too, but I think that it's misunderstood. And here's the point: if you use the wrong words, you set the wrong outcome. And if you use the word family for a team is not a family, and a family is not necessarily a team, unless they're playing a game together. Then, in fact, you're setting the whole thing. So maybe this idea of what is a delusion is misunderstanding the definition of words we use. But words are critical. To the point of where do you show compassion? It's a balance, okay? But it's a balance that inevitably goes to performance. As a manager, you have to be aware of performance. You have to blend in the chemistry. And then at the same, and you have to build the team. And I'll leave you with this. Look at a sports team. In this day and age, every player is possibly going to a different team the next year. Right? There are very few people that are just going to live on that team for their career. So, nonetheless, the teams that really win are the ones that connect, that have that special vibe among themselves, that whatever that special chemistry thing is. They communicate, they trust, they talk. In basketball, a big part of basketball on the court is how they talk. And if you go to a game, you're hearing them yelling at each other, go here, do this, do that. They know how everybody's moving. And you can't know that if you're not close. Mm-hmm. But they're professionals and they get fired. And they go to the next team and they succeed. Why is that? It's because they're not a family. They're just not a family. Let's stop using the wrong words.
Yeah, I love the transition to team. And we've used that as a comparison and analogy for many years. And what's interesting is when we're superstars and we find that we're not performing at a high level anymore, and we're kind of shifting to underperformance or realizing we're not as amazing as we were, a lot of times it's because those fundamentals of doing the things that got us there go away. And so in that team concept, you think about high-performing teams. Do you think they don't practice throughout the week in between games? You think they don't maintain performance in between the off-season?
Of course, yes.
Right. All of them have coaches and trainers, and they're constantly, no matter how gifted they are naturally, they are always training. They're always practicing. They're always getting critiqued on what can they do better next time, how they get that muscle memory going. And I don't necessarily see that in a family that way, right? Where there's just this constant development of not only the individual, but knowing that you're being put into a role that has to complement other roles to get to an end goal. It's not just an island at once. So when you're talking about that team analogy versus a family, I think you're spot on. We have to really shift away from looking at it as just being emotionally bought in, is that you get to emotionally help people when your company is more successful. Because how many people feel amazing when the company's doing bad, right? They always say, sales solves all problems. One of the realities is if you're in a business, when you see it not performing well, do you see that dynamic shift culturally at all? Or do you think that culture is what's going to keep the business from going from, let's say it's not doing well, to going and improving? Do you see any approach that you have to do from a leadership perspective to say, what do we do to shift from that negative mindset or things are bad to get things improving?
I actually have a story to go with that. I will also tell you this, that It's back to the question of what is delusional, and it's that failure leads to success. Failure does not lead to success. Success leads to more success. Failure doesn't lead to success. Failure happens on the road to success, but it doesn't indicate that, oh, well, that's just the next step along the line to success. It isn't that simple. It's much more intense and dynamic. To your question, I had built a business. We had about 400 employees, and we were passionate. We all agreed it was a passion play. We were really, really succeeding in every way. And we loved what we were doing. Everybody couldn't wait to get to work. People were there all the time. People were practicing when they weren't working. Like you said, they were intense. And there was a lot of trust in that had been built up. And to that guy's point that I said about yesterday that I talked to, people did know if they didn't fit in. You didn't have to ask somebody to leave if you hired them and they didn't fit. They knew they didn't want to stay, is more of what happened. So we hit a financial, really a tough moment. And we're going up, we're succeeding, we're growing up. But remember, growth costs money. So there is a point in time that it became unmanageable. And we faced that moment. And it led to a decision that we either had to cut a significant portion of our group to be able to survive, or we had alternatives to that. And I chose an alternative, which was to ask every employee in the company to reduce their salary, and I think it was 15%. It was a lot. It's significant for a lot of people. And across the board, we did it. From number 1 to number 400, including myself, we all took that cut. So that's a big ask to people. And all of a sudden, you're taking somebody that life is great, they're passionate, and they trust to, well, how could this happen? And the first look is to management and say, did management fail me? So there's that risk of that distrust that cannot be rebuilt, in my opinion, if you have that gap between trust of management or not. To me, it takes too long to rebuild that trust to be effective. So what do? Well, we did that. We said it. So the next thing we did is we said, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to give everybody the equivalent of stock options in the company. And here are the options for what is today's valuation of the company. And we're going to give that to you at today's valuation. And you can only sell it back to us, and we get to choose when we buy it back. So it may not be worth anything, but it may be worth something more than it is today. It will never be less than what we gave it to you today. But we get to choose when we ask you. But you get to choose yes or no. You can hold on to it longer, but we're always making the choice of when we bring it back in or to monetize it. We lost no one, and this went out. This was a 9-month thing. So people had to adjust their lifestyle for that period of time. And we continued to be passionate. We continued, and how did that happen? It happened because we shared our financials. We explained our problem. We didn't hide from anything. We had discussions about what it meant to everybody and why this situation presented itself at this time. And people had to say, okay, all right, let me decide, is this where I want to be or not? Everybody seemed to accept the honesty and transparency. And they accepted the stack, but I don't think they believed in it. But they just decided they wanted to still be a part. We continued to grow, and we didn't stop growing during this time. We just ran out of money. Mm-hmm. Okay. And at the end of the day, we just ended up buying everybody's stock back for improvement. They all made a lot of money. I think nobody made less than 50% more of their money over time. I think it was all resolved in a couple of years. Some people kept it because we allowed them to keep it at some point as normal stock. But it turned into a positive experience because it built more trust, not less.
It's interesting how through something that difficult, you had so little turnover, right? You had all these people that stayed through that. And I know we've talked about the term loyalty.
Right.
It gets thrown around a lot. And you talked about how loyalty really gets you nowhere. And I want to understand the dynamics of what is the difference in the staff, which feels like they were being loyal to the business or to the mission,
Yes.
or I don't know, maybe they just couldn't leave because financially it was too advantageous for them on the upside with the stock you gave them, or, the passion play just was enough for them or whatever it was. But let's talk about loyalty. Where does loyalty fit into the delusions or the myths? And, where does it make sense, or does it never make sense to be loyal to a business, or a business, I guess, loyal to their staff? What does that even mean?
I think loyalty, maybe that's one of the words that isn't defined well enough in the business. To me, loyalty is I will meet my promises to you as long as you meet your promises to me, and with the overlay that the business has conditions that often change our dynamic and our choices. And if you understand all those things and are willing to accept that, I'll be loyal to that environment. And what does that mean? That means that as long as you, Christian, are doing your job, as long as you're meeting the goals that you and I have agreed to meet, and as long as I'm meeting the same thing with you, that's good. And we'll be loyal to that agreement that we have. But we also have a business, and a business changes. We had a pandemic. It changed the business. There are a lot of things that change a business. I can't even you'd have to give a year of podcast to explain all the conditions. But so if that condition changes, I have a responsibility as a leader. And it's to come to you or the employees and tell you what those changes of conditions have been and how they may change our agreement between ourselves. And as long as then we come up with a new agreement, I'll be loyal to that and you'll be loyal to that. And you give loyalty. You don't earn loyalty. That's another delusion. You can't earn loyalty. You have to give it to somebody and trust them until you can't. And when you can't, then you can't. Okay, so I'm going to trust the person I hire on the day I hire them. I'm going to trust them. I'm going to give them the loyalty that goes with the trust, meaning the agreement we've made. I'm going to be loyal to that. And when one of us doesn't earn it, then we've lost it. And once you lose it, it's lost. I'm not a believer that all these things can be rebuilt. That's what a family does. They rebuild trust. A business is not taking the time to rebuild trust. A business is a business, and it has a drive and a purpose and a condition that says you want to raise every year. There's a cost of living increase necessary. I have a business that I may make changes to the vision and approach, and you need to make a decision whether you want to be a part of that, but I'm not going to make a decision based on you. I'm going to make a decision based on the business needs, and you have to either get in alignment, and I can trust that, or not.
So much is going through my head around this concept of the transactional nature of the loyalty, right?
Yes.
Where it's not blind. It's not given as something that you couldn't lose, right? It's like, I'm just going to be loyal to the company. I'm going to be loyal to my boss. I'm going to be loyal to, the mission of the business. And it's many times one-sided.
Yes.
Because many companies do demand loyalty.
Yes.
To the business. Your bosses demand loyalty to them. You will not go behind my back. There's this decorum around loyalty where it's like this badge of honor. It's like you do not break up the loyalty. But sometimes it's not reciprocal, where you as a leader or you as a business owner demand that your people work extra hard, extra hours. They do all this extra effort, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to give them raises or promotions or that you're going to give them the tools that they need to be successful. And that's not to say all businesses and all leaders, of course, but the unfortunate reality is there are a lot of cultural norms in businesses where it's a privilege for you to apply for a company and to work for them. But it's an interrogation to go through the hiring process. It's this trials and tribulations, this pain to get onboarded at many businesses. And then the reality is, in the end, they demand your loyalty, the best, everything you have to give. But that doesn't necessarily mean as a business you have to give those things back. So from that myth of, loyalty being this thing that you can earn or whatever it may be, what is the better alternative then in that thought of loyalty? Is it the fact that you have to be clear around where the loyalty is contractual, meaning here's your job, here's your performance levels, here's what I expect of you, and if you do these things, this is what you can achieve. And that's the transaction of it versus just blind assumption if I work hard and I do my best that you'll just recognize me. You'll know that I'm a good employee and I'm going to do good things and vice versa. Do you have an approach?
That's a delusion, by the way.
Absolutely.
Right. It doesn't work that way. Hey, this is the show that I'm going to be doing, which is not easy to hear this stuff. It sounds callous and cold, but it is real. I would tell you this, that people want to always have security. Security, it's a key to things. And so when they join an organization, that's what they're, in many ways, underlying their career challenges and growth, they're looking for a sense of, I'm here, I do things, I lock the door at night like I'm supposed to, I go to lunch when I need to, and come back without having done drugs or drink. I'm good, keep me. And it's wrong to think that. You don't join a business for security. You just don't do it. And you join a business because it's a competitive world we live in. You're competing every day too. In my business, I earn from you loyalty, or what the word is, this agreement that we have per se, by doing what I say I'm going to do and being open and transparent to people. And that's all I can do. And that's all I can do to give you. I can't tell you I'll notice you every day. I can't tell you that we may find a condition that changes in the business that good people have to leave. But I can guarantee you this, that if you stay here and are excited about it every day, the day that you're not excited, at least when you leave, or when I need to ask you to leave because your enthusiasm has changed and it's affecting us, you're going to be better at your next job because you've learned real life in the real way, in a responsible approach from a business that knows how to run a business and that has given you the challenges that have raised your level. And listen, if we as leaders set our goals when it comes to people, not just to turn the widget, but to be able to be a part of helping you become the best version of yourself, better than you may have seen yourself become. And then we have a hard day where we have to say goodbye. I don't have to feel bad, and you shouldn't feel bad, because the security that you have isn't that you kept that job. It's that you can go get another one and be better at it than you ever could have been if you hadn't joined a company in the first place.
This is James. James is a contact center manager with a passion for philosophy and hiking. As a kid, he made a promise to himself that he would always follow his passion. Today, he ponders on the thought that this promise is probably the best decision he ever made. Today, James loves his job just as much as he loves hiking. So much that he sometimes brings the scent of fresh pine and the tranquility of the mountain streams back to the office with him. With NobelBiz as his company's provider, James found the necessary peace of mind to finally bridge the gap between his passion and his work. By choosing to partner with the promise-keeping voice and software provider of the industry, contact center technical issues, downtime, and poor customer experience are now a thing of the past. In an industry ruled by uncertainty, NobelBiz combines balanced pricing with the highest quality, topped off with outstanding support. But above all, NobelBiz delivers peace of mind to contact center managers and owners. And for the first time, James hit that sweet spot of focus and confidence that is allowing him to take his business to new heights of profitability and success. After all, you know what they say, promises are the uniquely human way of ordering the future. NobelBiz, the promise keepers of the industry.
Yeah, we could have a whole show on that topic,
Yeah.
but you're going to have your own, and excited to see what we're going to be getting from a content perspective on that. Let's kind of shift a little bit.
Okay.
Obviously, when it comes to the contact center space, that's really the core of the audience of all the people that listen to the show. We know there's been a lot of disruption in the space, a lot of change, but when it comes to where the future is going in the contact center space, and especially from a leadership perspective, what are you seeing are the trends, or what do you want to see as a trend going forward?
Well, contact centers are complicated. I think it's what attracts me to it, because it's there's a lot of moving parts. We all know that, right? I mean, I'm not telling the contact center people anything that they don't know themselves. But it also is great and challenging. And the successful people have to know their own identity. Because if they're challenging them, if they're challenged by saying, how do I become better? How am I a leader? How am I a manager? How am I an agent? And they don't know their own identity and they're always questioning it, they're not going to succeed when you have a business that has so many moving parts. So a contact center can improve, and I know this from the technology side, through points of automation. And so I see that as a critical piece of the future. And it's hard for contact centers because contact centers generally are blue collar in nature. Generally, contact centers are hardworking people that just every minute counts, and they like what they can control. And when things are automated, there's a feeling they can't control it. And I have been in this for 3 decades of technology, selling technology into contact centers. And I can tell you that the best technology is never adopted easily. So what that means is the best automation is not accepted easily. But once it's accepted and a contact center is willing to adjust to it, and it's not the tech that has to adjust, it's the contact center that has to adjust, then they're going to remove some of all those moving parts. And they're going to be a bit more streamlined in certain areas. They're going to still have control over areas they want to, but there are other areas that they can put to that robotic process automation per se. And if they do that and they decide to go that way, which I still think is going to be slower than necessary, they're going to increase their value. They're going to create more money. They're going to do the things that are important to them, which is create cash machines that put out cash for them. But they have to change. And so my hope is that this new generation of owners of contact centers are different from my generation of owners of contact centers, and that they are willing to be more adaptable to technology than the past, because there is good stuff coming out with AI. But remember, AI isn't thinking for you. That's a misunderstanding of AI today. AI is really there to kind of elegantly get rid of things that take you time to do. That's how I look at it. It gets you to the end game a little bit smoother or quicker or more consistently and with maybe less mistakes. So I hope that the new generation picks up on AI. I hope the new generation picks up on RPA, robotic process automation. And there are great tools today out there to allow for that. I think that the industry has a long way to go in as much as they're all buying communication systems that are Omni, ours being Omni Plus. I actually think that they really don't use it. They still go voice to voice. And they don't understand that people don't all communicate voice to voice anymore. I never communicate voice to voice with my transactions. I can't think of as many transactions I've done that are voice to voice anymore. So you have to, if you're a contact center, you have to figure out there's a new way, and you have it in your tech. Why aren't you using it? So yeah, go buy Omni solutions. Never buy something without it, but start using it for goodness sakes, because people aren't. And I think as you get younger people running these contact centers, and they're coming in now, these new generations, I'm seeing a lot of new generations running contact centers. They are going to adopt this at a quicker pace than the old blue-collar way of my generation running call centers.
When it comes to the contact center, right, sometimes we talk about the industry as this like giant singular bubble, and we all know that it's just so dynamic, from BPOs that are here, near shore, offshore. You got centers within a business, you got verticals, you got healthcare, finance, you got, collections, you have people trying to make sales, you're talking to your existing customers, inbound, outbound. There's just this huge world around communications. You've talked about, you don't even use phone anymore to communicate. But from a leadership perspective, when we think about the dynamics between what is an internal center that their whole job is retention within a brand, all the way to a BPO that is doing like 10 different things for 10 different customers. They want 10 different things a day changed on a regular basis, working with a lot of different systems, all the way to the tech companies that are out there that are producing the new AI, the new shiny object. And then you have the consumer that says, like yourself, well, I don't even use a phone anymore, or I actually want to use this in particular medium for this, but I prefer this other medium for something else. Where do you see, from the leadership perspective in each of these types of business, what is the mindset, the driver for this change? Is it the business saying this is how the industry will adopt this approach? Or is it the customer saying, this is how I want to be communicated and you better find a way to do that, or I'm going to go somewhere else? Do you know if there's a balance there, or is it really one or the other?
I believe it's very linear. It's the consumer. They're the driver of everything. Yeah, you can change a consumer over time, but I'll give you an example. Voice over IP in the early 2000s was readily available. Wasn't adopted until on a regular basis until 10, 15 years later. Why? Why is that? So, yeah, the tech was there, and you could say the tech should have driven the market, but the market decided on its own when it was ready for it. So we as technology people can put it out there in front of them. We can convince a small circle in a boutique way of using it, and maybe that's your trial piece, your proof piece, your case study piece. But at the same time, the market's still going to decide when to do something. And I think businesses make a big mistake. They think they develop that shiny object you're talking about, and so it's great, and so everybody's going to buy it just because it's the best thing around. And it doesn't work that way. Yes, there are lottery wins. 1 out of 1,000 of those may just take off. But the truth is that the market decides everything. And if we as business people don't adapt to the market, we can develop all the best tech in the world and we'll still be homeless. and that's how I feel about it.
So let's kind of shift a little bit to focusing more on AI. There's so much talk around AI replacing people, especially in the contact center space. And I know there's debates between where it's going to help empower humans versus replace them. Where do you sit on that? Where are you seeing near term versus what does the next few years look like for stuff like that?
Well, outside of NobelBiz, I am the owner of a private equity firm. And in that firm, we have a company called Meta AI, so I'm an owner of an AI company. And that AI, and it's for North America. And that AI tool is a conversational chat built initially for the collections industry. So why did I buy into that? That seems to be important to this question. I bought into it because I believe that the tech today allows for consistent negotiation between an AI conversational tool and the debtor, the audience, the market per se. And that they can do it not necessarily wholly better than a human being can do it, and in some ways not as effectively, but they can do it more consistently, dependably, and with the recognition that what I said, most people aren't doing their transactions by phone anymore. Many are, but many are not. And so I'm going to put a tool out there to let people communicate in a safer way where they're not having to have a personality clash or anything with that tool they're using. They can just, here's the debt you owe. How do you want to solve it? Can you solve it? If you can't solve it, what steps can you take to solve it? And all of that, I know 1 million out of 1 million calls that tool makes will go exactly the same way dependably. 1 million out of 1 million calls with a person, some will go better, some will not go better, and the average actually I don't think will be equal. So yeah, I believe AI is a critical piece. I invested in it, and I don't think there's any risk at all. I think that those are the components. It doesn't solve the collections industry. It's not humans out, that AI tool in. It's a combination of all.
Implementation. We've talked about execution, implementation a lot. Outside of these conversations, we've really focused on if you don't execute well, if you don't implement well, it doesn't matter how good of a person you are, how good of a product you have, it's going to fail. So when we think about AI, it's such a buzzword, right? And it means a lot of things to a lot of people, and it's a catch-all term, right? Generative AI, you got all these algorithms over here, you got all this stuff where you can sit there and say, I'm going to have this LLM do X, Y, and Z, and I don't have to do anything. And other people say, oh my gosh, I got to worry about hallucinations and the things being inaccurate. So at the end of the day, though, it's not autonomous. There's still human beings participating with it to recreate a function that's maybe repetitive or to enhance something that is in conjunction with a human activity. So where do you see from a leadership perspective, how do you go from this being super cool, shiny, to actually being implemented and executed in a business to do something well? Because if you remember, the first IVRs, the first chatbots, people just put them in because they were cool, and people hated them. They got stuck in the IVR. They would try to, get to somebody they could never get to somebody. They were in a chatbot. They just get so frustrated they need to talk to a human being. Are there learning lessons from the previous ways that we were executing omnichannel and all these other medias when we adopt AI? Or is everyone be successful right now when they adopt AI and it just is flip the switch on, it's fantastic, and it's kumbaya?
I think it's nothing works if you don't work it. So tech by itself, the best AI tools in the world, the best automation will fail you if you put all your confidence in it alone. That's my belief. And maybe that changes in 15 years from now. I don't know. So I think you have to be careful. And what I've seen in contact centers is what they seem to do is take new tech and carve out small pieces of their business to test it. Now, that doesn't always give them enough, in my opinion, to adopt it. But it seems to be what they do. And why is that? It's because the business itself needs to continue to run and make money at the pace it's been making money. And no new tech is worthy of anything if it takes $1 more than the cost of that tech to get implemented. It just doesn't. So where the responsibility lies is where? Is it on the company putting the tech in and implementing it properly? Is it the business deciding to use it properly and understand where to integrate it? Or is there a consultant you need to bring in to be able to advise you of how to use it and integrate it in the proper way? Because tech people, we don't know how you're using it. We see how people use it, but we're not a call center. We're tech people. We'd like to think we're contact center people. It's not true. That's a delusion. We're just not that. And the contact center, they're not tech people. They have some tech people, but they're limited to what they do, not what we do. And so you have two parties implementing a new tech that neither of them exactly understand the other side of it. We all pretend we do. We don't. Okay? So now there is this whole other layer of consultants that charge a lot of money to come in and tell a business owner how to use the tech. They position it, though, that it's because the tech people don't know how to use their own software. But that's not really true. We don't know how to use it the way you want to use it. And so you have this kind of disconnect that's going on. And I think the company, I don't think there's an answer to it. There isn't one way or another. But I think the company, not the call center, but the tech company that learns how to integrate technology properly into the work environment is the winner. Nobody out there has won yet. There are great companies that haven't figured it out yet. And it's messy. And it's probably why contact centers don't like to implement new tech. They like new tech. They go to shows. They fill up the shows and look at it, and then they never implement it. It's because nobody knows how to coordinate this yet. If you, Christian, go out, start a business, and your business says, how do I coordinate tech to the work environment of contact centers properly so that a successful implementation will get you to the next generation of your business, you'll win, and you'll be the next Steve Jobs.
Well, I'll tell you right now, I'd love nothing more than for that to be true, and I look forward to that being part of my future. But right now, today, when we look at tech and implementation of tech, you're spot on that a lot of tech companies, unfortunately, their expertise is building the tech, but they don't always know the use cases on how that tech is going to solve specific problems. And it's very much so in AI. You don't know how many shows I go to and my team goes to. And it feels like there's a different AI company every single time. And ones we saw before aren't there anymore. And a lot of the reason is they built something that they thought was cool. They thought it was going to solve everything, but they didn't know what they're solving for. And then at the same time, you have companies that are buying products because they're told if they do not buy this, they're going to be left behind. You have to do it. You have to invest in AI or you will not survive. Your business will be gone. Your customers will not do business with you. But they don't go in knowing what they're implementing.
Correct.
Why do I want AI? What is AI solving in my business? And sometimes you spend this money, you go through this effort, you know what happens. You end up now going and saying, hey, without the money being spent, I could have used this somewhere else because the money that was spent here was a waste.
Right.
So I have this pain, this part of my journey where I go, this wasn't worth it for me. I'm not going to do this again. So you now have to spend all this time and effort trying to vet products. You said earlier, what are most businesses only doing carve-ups of little pieces? Well, it's because they're running their business.
Right, right.
So what company do you know of that has a dedicated team set aside that all they do is vet and know how to implement new tech in their business and still can run completely efficient?
Do you know, I don't know any. Honestly, I'm sure there are out there. I am a student of business, so I look at businesses a lot that are in and outside of my industry, and I look at tech a lot, and so I'm actually looking. I don't know that I consciously look for that exactly, but at the same time, nothing has come in front of my eyes. I don't know. I just don't know of any business that has figured it out. I really think the crazy gap right now in business is this. It's call it the softer piece. The tech is look at the tech as a tangible, and look at the business or the contact center in our case as the tangible, and look at training how to use something as pretty straightforward, and the ability to use something as pretty straightforward, but the adoption, meaning the complete and comprehensive integration into a business, that's that soft piece that nobody has figured out. I think there are consultants that feel they have, but as long as they remain consultants, and not a part of any particular business, they'll never fully help that business engage with all new tech. So I don't know the answer to that.
So, Steve, with your new series, you've had this discussion about the CEO God complex, right? You've talked about how there's this top-down management starts to become tyrannical in business. Okay. Help us understand that dynamic. And do you believe that this is really common still in the contact center space? And do you see something we're moving towards, maybe something more authentic?
I think people are people, and they've been the same. I study history, and today I've been reading about the Roman Empire and looking at Caesar and how Caesar started and what he became. And it's pretty clear to me, and when I look at today's politics, it's even more clear that what's that saying? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I believe it. I think it's evident. The human nature hasn't changed a bit since before Christ, and it's the same today. We change in what we want and how we get it. And inevitably, when you have a leader that has no controls and that everybody around that leader is circled around to validate that person's thinking, inevitably, the people that pay the price are twofold. The customer, because they only get what one person wants them to get. That's the autocrat that's running it. Or the employee that only gets what one people want them to be. And that's all they get. And I don't see any good outcomes that come from that. I think Steve Jobs was a tyrant. And the benefit of it was he got something into production. And the smart move was when the board got rid of him. Because in getting rid of him, they recognized that being a tyrant is not the way to do it. Now, when they got in trouble, they brought him back, okay? But when he came back, he didn't have the same control over the company. He was the creator of products, and that was different. Okay, so they found a way to contain him. So you have to be straight. Business, we like to think everything's evolving. And we like to think, business today is better than it was in the 50s or turn of the 19th century. It's the same. Okay, I'm sorry, it's just the same. So you got to be careful, because I was a consultant for many businesses for a long time before I began my TouchStar software in time. And I had great ideas about how I would be able to bring a more, connected company together and that listened to everybody. And I came from a generation where we marched into the streets for improvement of people's voices being heard. So my entire background was more open for a wide range of people and people's ideas. And then I consulted with a lot of businesses and kept seeing this mistake that most businesses were run by this tiny little group of people that were in a cocoon and didn't understand what other people were doing in the business, but were making the decisions for those people. And I could see that was really ineffective and really crass, frankly. So I start running my business. Finally, I have my business, and I'm trying to do it with my philosophy. And I remember a moment in time, we're now successful. And suddenly people are noticing the business and noticing me. And I don't relate those two exactly, and I'm sort of not thinking it's getting to my ego. But here's what happens. One day I'm on the phone at home, and I'm angry with someone on the phone. And I'm very intensely having a long, angry conversation. My wife, Judy, walked by and heard me, because you had to hear me. And she said to me this, after I hung up. She said, what has happened to you? Why, in fact, are you talking to anybody that way? You don't have the right to treat people that way. And it was a huge moment for me. And unfortunately, I failed over time, more times than that one time. And what she was saying is that you've become arrogant. You've gone from being this holistic person with good ideals to being just like everybody you don't like. And I defended myself and said, yeah, but in this case it was necessary. And I'm sure that I felt confident that I was right. But she was right. She was right that the power of my control didn't help anybody. And that I had started to change my behavior. And it goes back to that absolute power corrupts absolutely. You don't want it to, we don't like it to, and there are leaders that maybe it's never happened to. But minimally, an autocratic leader, minimally, their quirkiness and idiosyncrasies impact a business if they have too much control. So what's the alternative becomes the question. The alternative, there are ways to change. I've done my best to make changes. There are times I'm an autocrat. There are times I'm Steve, and Steve is just like everybody else that is impossible. But when you think you're it, and all you put around yourself are people to validate you or are really professionals at convincing you that they're not yes men, but they really are, you got a big problem.
We could have a whole show on that topic alone, but there's two pieces that really popped out for me that that hit home, right? Number one is this idea that the power gets to your head. The power starts to convince you that making poor decisions is okay, because those poor decisions in that moment are poor to the world, but in your world, you made the decision, so that is the law of the land. And being able to step back from why you have that power in the first place is important, because that power may be to make decisions, but you're not the smartest person in the room. And some of those decisions are being made because you have people smarter than you in the areas of the business that you need them to be the expert, so that you can go make those decisions quickly and effectively. And so for those leaders out there, that they need to be the smartest person, the most powerful person. They're in love with the idea of being the autocrat or the boss. If you find yourself in that, do you believe people can actually step back from that? Or you have to just know that that's the kind of boss that it is, and do you want to work for that kind of boss? Meaning they probably can't change. They're going to be that kind of person. I know you mentioned earlier without Judy coming in and saying, hey, knock that out. That's not okay. Would you say that it was before you went full autocrat, or do you think you actually were able to come back and say that people can change?
I think we have to hope that people can change. I will tell you, I'm better at that today than I was then, which is far from being good at it. And that's working a lot and being very introspective. And I've made some strides. I used to think that if I gave away my intensity, that was what made everything work around me. And I had to realize that what works around me are how I am removing obstacles for other people to work. And that's the key you have to get into your head as a leader, that first of all, you can never fail to be, you can't go walk into a room and throw your glasses. You cannot walk into a room and lose your temper, because those are almost irrecoverable things. And an employee needs to decide if they want that environment, and at the same time, they may hunt their whole career and for the right job with the right person and never find anything but that. That's how prevalent it is out there. Most companies are on one level or another run singularly. Most of them don't admit it. Okay, so that's a whole nother session we'd have. I don't know. I think I'd like to think people can change. I've done my best to change. I'm not sure it's always effective because we are the animal that we are, to tell you the truth. But yeah, I think we have to endeavor to change. There are ways. You have to start to trust the fact that you're not the one with the answers, that your seat is the one to remove obstacles, and hire the best people, give them the best environment to make decisions, and teach them that it's okay to say yes and not ask. And I think that's the key.
Yeah, I think when things are going well in a business versus when they're not going well or they're stagnant, different types of leaders thrive in different scenarios. And so that doesn't necessarily mean you're the same leader at all times. You may rise to the occasion in different ways. But staying static through all things and thinking that singular approach for everything, that when there's an emergency, maybe you got to be more firm. You got to get people to get what they're doing because time is urgent in that moment. When times are going well, maybe you get complacent. Maybe you don't push the gas as much as you could. You get happy with the success that you have. So it's interesting to see how retrospectively one can look back at oneself, but also look at how do you develop the next future set of leaders, the next set of people that you're mirroring activity and behavior that others are going to say, well, Steve does it, so if I do it, that's going to make me successful as well. And so knowing that what we do for our own success also means that we're sharing with the future generations of what that looks like. What does success look like, and what are they going to emulate? So I'd like to kind of shift to the end of our conversation around some personal stuff. And I know you've really talked about resilience and it really being a key to your success. When you talk about setbacks, you talk about that resiliency, what about resiliency has been so important to your success?
My mother had polio when I was born, and she almost died. And she lived in a lung, one of those iron lungs back in that day. Never was given the hope that she'd get out of it. Eventually, she got out of it. Eventually, she walked with a lot of metal on her to get around. Beyond that, she started to walk only with a cane. And she learned how to drive. And then she regained her independence. And that's what I mean about resiliency. And none of the moments that she got to did she think there was another place to get to. But she did get there. And what I think of resiliency and what I learned through that experience and really from my family was that life is gonna drop bad stuff on you. Unpredictable and way worse than you would plan on it yourself. And most things are not absolute. You don't just live or die. You still live. But how do you go about that now? And it's about putting one foot in front of the other and not abandoning. Now, in my mom's case, she couldn't or chose not to abandon herself. In business, you're choosing not to abandon your journey, your mission. And so, yes, failure happens in those moments, but it's not going to make me succeed. It just happens. It just sucks when you stub your toe and it just hurts.
That does suck.
Yeah, right? It just does. But it didn't make me walk better. I'll still stub my foot again. But what makes me who I am, and in my business what it becomes, is accepting that moment and then continuing to take the next step. Always step forward. I used to say that to my daughter. It's probably the one thing I think about that hopefully had an impact with her when she was growing up, which was you don't have to be anything. You don't have to choose anything. You certainly don't need to choose what I may think of as something important. But whatever you're doing, continue to step forward. Whatever you face, take a step forward and make a decision. It's an actual conscious decision. What is my step forward and then go to do it. If it fails, just take a different step forward.
So much to digest there. And, to finally get to this piece of outside of work, because you work all the time.
I do.
But there's got to be moments where you're not working. There's times you disconnect. But is there part where you, outside of work, are building on yourself? You have your own growth, your own innovation of Steve. And if so, what is that?
I think today I'm the same. Whether I'm your friend, whether I'm working with you, whatever it may be, whether I'm a husband, it isn't like I've become a different person today. In other words, I don't have to deal with that idea of imposter syndrome based on the situation. I'm just me. But I have activities that I like that are not working. I love what I do. Work isn't really work to me per se. It's a joy. It's one of the joys in my life is getting to be able to work and mentor people and see people become the best of what they can be. That's a driver for me. That being said, I'm a writer. I write books. I write novels that don't have much to do with my business at all and are more just novels. I read a lot. I always have at least 2 books going all the time. One is not necessarily my work oriented today, but just business, that type of thing. But I read a lot of history, and in a sense, I'm learning about the cycles. That do help me in my work. But I'm also reading a thriller. I'm reading suspense. I'm reading trash. I'm watching trash. I'm watching cop shows. I'm watching sports, a lot of sports. I'm a big sports fan. I'm a songwriter, and I write songs, and I play music, and I'm a dad, and I'm a friend, and I'm a husband. So I'm just me, and I just hope everybody gets to the point in their life where they just get to be me confidently, not arrogantly. There's a difference, because it's a good place to be. Doesn't mean it's always easy, but it's a good place to be.
Well, it sounds like you don't do very much outside of work.
I don't.
Well, look, Steve, it's been a great conversation. Loved having you here. Obviously, we could talk forever, but for those, obviously, that are fans of the show, we appreciate any type of feedback. Obviously, subscribe when possible, and we look forward to having you on the next episode.
Thanks for having me, Christian. Appreciate the audience, too.